Connecticut and Massachusetts, Z&M Homes buys houses. Sell your property to the local guys.
Needs repairs, updates, maybe foreclosure or inherited? No problem. We gotcha. Google or add us on Facebook at ZANDMHomes.com.
It's Baxi's musical podcast. Resistance is useless.
Generally speaking, when people think of where punk rock begins, they typically point to New York City. Arguments can be made that it actually begins with the Stooges and MC5 in Michigan, and other people will tell you that it started somewhere else. It doesn't really matter. What does kind of matter is giving credit where credit is due. Now, some people will tell you that punk begins with the Ramones, or some will tell you it begins with Patti Smith, or when television played at CBGB's for the first time in 1974. Some will bring it even further back than that and claim it was the New York Dolls in 1971, or the Velvet Underground, who released their first album in 1967. I think those two examples are actually a pretty decent place to start. And while all of those things are certainly relevant, people often overlook the other band that fits firmly into that equation. The name of that band were the Dictators. The Dictators were a band initially formed in upstate New York in 1971. It's a band called Crud, featuring singer-bass player Andy Chernoff and guitarist Ross the Boss Friedman. By 1973, they had come back to the city and had become one of the best bands of the bunch. By March of 1975, they would release their fantastic debut album, Go Girl Crazy, featuring Chernoff, Ross the Boss, guitarist Scott Kempner, Stu-Boy King on drums, and Handsome Dick Manitoba, who shared some of the vocal duties with Chernoff on that first album. In total, the Dictators released 3 records in the 1970s, including Go Girl Crazy in 1975, but Manifest Destiny in 1977, and Blood Brothers in 1978. By all accounts, the Dictators were a monster of a band that preceded punk and influenced as much, if not more, than anybody else. Even Bruce Springsteen was a fan of the Dictators, providing an uncredited vocal on their 1978 classic track, Faster, Louder. Since that time, the Dictators have formed and reformed a number of times, releasing a couple of amazing live albums along the way, and then reforming in 1990 as Manitoba's Wild Kingdom. And in 2001, they released a terrific comeback album entitled DFFD. And just this year, the Dictators have released a brand new single, a version of Crazy Horses, the 1972 heavy metal classic from, believe it or not, the Osmond Brothers. So here's the thing about the Dictators. They were a band of indisputable importance. Music critic John Dugan once said of the Dictators, quote, "They are among the finest proto-punk bands to walk the earth." And he was absolutely right. The Dictators were incredible. A band that rocked every bit as much, if not harder than anybody else, with better songs, a greater sense of humor, and with a fearlessness that record companies and radio stations around the country in 1975 didn't really know what to do with. And that's also part of the story. My guest today is Andy Chernoff, the band's leader since the very beginning, playing bass, guitar, keyboards, and serving as the band's songwriter. He's also been a music journalist and a producer. He's been described as the Christopher Columbus of punk, which if you can ignore the spread of syphilis and alcoholism to indigenous peoples of the world, then I suppose that's not really such a bad description. This is my conversation with the legendary Andy Chernoff from the Dictators on Baxi's musical podcast.
This is just audio podcast, right?
Yeah.
I'm not like just worked out, and I'm like, I'm laying in my chair here. So
Right. That's great. You're still living in the Hudson Valley, right?
I do, yes.
You do. Are you guys still getting a lot of flooding?
No, not where I am. It's further south. It's flooding. I'm sure there are areas here that do flood, but where I am, I'm on a mountain. It all goes right by me. My road is got ditches on both sides. It's no problem.
So I live in the Springfield area. The Connecticut River is starting to get really choppy and wildly polluted. So we're keeping
near you. Is that by your house?
I live about like 3 towns over from Springfield. So
Okay, so you're personally not worried about flooding though.
Well, I'm in my basement right now. I got a couple of wet spots on the floor, so I moved a bunch of stuff around. Yeah, so who knows? Hopefully, I'll I'll weather the storm. So it's
I'm in my basement also. But I have a pretty dry basement. I've never had any flooding. I have ditches around the house. I've done everything I can to prevent water getting it away from my house.
so before I get into any of the real big stuff, I gotta show you something. I am the proud owner of this relic. This is an original 1972 copy of Crazy Horses. I don't remember how I got it, and you can tell by the looks of it, this thing has been beaten to shit by me over the years. So the Dictators version of it is it's so much fun. And I have to ask, what made you decide to cover that song?
Story is we started to reform the band. The goal, we said, okay, well, let's record some songs. Let's just establish our new identity and talk about stuff. And there are some songs I had written, and we did 2 covers. And one of the covers was Crazy Horses. And let me tell you though, I didn't know so many people covered the song. If I knew how many people covered the song, probably wouldn't have done it. But I like our version. I think the video is a lot of fun.
It's very cool.
It's like the Monkees or something to me. It's like very, no attitude, no punk attitude. It's just rock and roll, good solos, good melody, and good playing, good singing. So thank you very much for mentioning that. And
I actually interviewed Albert Bouchard about a week ago on my radio show, and
really?
And I was asking him about Blue Oyster Cult. I was asking about his solo record, and then I asked him about Crazy Horses, and that was the thing that got him excited. And like he was like,
we're happy. We're happy with the song.
Yeah,
we're happy with all the recordings we've done, and we just did some more recording, and it's coming out really good. A lot of fun. Yeah,
it's funny because he was talking. He spent about 5 or 6 minutes talking about the theme of his solo album, and then he at that point says, "Isn't it crazy that we covered an Osmond Brothers song?" I said, "You listen to the theme of your solo record, and this is the crazy part." I
know. The storyline of Imaginos is science fiction, and here's a fun little pop tune.
So I'm reading about about the single, and I've looked at the EP, and it's a bunch of great songs that you guys have done before. But I'm also reading that the plan is that a new album is coming out. What can you tell me about that?
We're recording a new album, but we're going to be releasing songs every few months. We have another song ready for September. We have a European Spanish tour, and we have for a big tour on the East Coast. We'll see if that actually occurs. So we have things in the fire. And then after that, we have a song we're going to re-release every December, or re-promote every December, called Festivus, about the holiday of Festivus, which is in December. And then in January or February, we're going to release another new song. And I suspect by the end of this year, we'll have a new album completed, all 10, 11, 12 songs, whatever we decide. And we have a company that's going to release it digitally. We have another company that's going to release it on vinyl. And we'll make sure everything's coordinated. And, but this is the thing. You release an album, 2 weeks after you release the album, people forget, because there's so much stuff coming out. Think of Paul McCartney or Bruce Springsteen releases records all the time. And who knows? I mean, I can't remember what his last record was. The last one, I loved Western Stars. I don't know. And it wasn't a hit. To me, that was a hit record through and through. So we're going to keep putting out stuff, keeping people, maintain visibility, and see what happens. Look, the Dictators were never we have no hit records. We had an audience, but we have no huge following. So, we're just going to keep making music we like, see what happens. We're a bunch of old guys, as I say in the song, let's get the band back together. Senior citizens who don't give a damn. We don't care. I've been to this rodeo. I understand. We're here to have a good time, make music, because every day you make music is a good day.
Yeah.
And we have really good bands, and we're having a lot of fun. So we will continue on that path. And we'll release an album. And after we release the album, we'll put out songs after that, because we're going to we record digitally. We record and we record in our own home studios. We pass files back and forth, very long process, but we get it done, because everybody is all over the place on the East Coast here.
You
So-
mentioned about the commerciality of the Dictators when they were out. And obviously, the Dictators they had this interesting place in history in a way, in 74, 75. There's not a lot of bands doing what you're doing, and you kind of fall in this
Nobody
time frame.
was doing what we're doing.
Nobody. Yeah. But yeah. And like, even as you kind of fill the gap between the New York Dolls and the Ramones, you can't say that you had any sort of blueprint to do what the Dictators were doing. What was the thought behind that? Were you just guys just trying to have a great time, or was it something different than that?
I had this fanzine when I was in college called Teenage Wasteland Gazette, and it's sort of the band became sort of like the physical manifestation of the fanzine. Basically, bunch of wise guys making jokes all the time. We were naive. We were basically trying to have a good time, as I'm saying now, just trying to have a good time. We weren't serious about our direction. We really got signed a little early. Sandy Pearlman is a visionary. He saw something in us. I have no idea what the fuck he saw in us. But months after we became a band, and Scott and I had never been in a band before. He came up. I was going to school in Newport. We lived in a house in Bronx, and Sandy Pearlman comes up and says, "I'm going to get you a deal." He got us a deal. We recorded our album in 1974. We were in the studio when the Ramones did their very, very first show at CBGB's in August of 74. Released the record in early 75, I think it was March. And in that time, we had no place to play, but CBGB's had just started booking bands. So we were able to develop an audience there and develop our show a little bit. And I don't know, I went off on a tangent there. I forgot what the question was. Oh, yeah, it's 50 years ago. You can remember that.
Yeah.
Literally 50 years ago. So, I was only 10 years old at the time.
When I've talked to people that had seen you back, in those early days, they all kind of say the same thing, that when you guys were playing live, the Dictators are kind of untouchable. It was such a good band. The songs were so good. You played so well that other bands were kind of in awe of the Dictators and what they were doing.
Yeah, we got a little earlier start. We developed our professional abilities a little earlier, and we were also very mainstream in our sound. We were a hard rock band. We had punk elements. We certainly had punk attitude, but it was a lot of riff-based songs versus the Ramones was a lot of downstrokes. And I don't know, if people said that. I guess that's good. That's good. I'll take that.
When you think back to, you said you got signed a little bit early, and that may very well be true. But what would happen like in the next 2 to 5 years, and a little bit maybe even be after that? You guys were putting out, by that point, you put out 3 albums by 78, 79. Did you feel like that you just weren't getting the credit that you deserved? I mean, when you say that it wasn't commercially successful, I listen to those records, man. All 3 of them are great. I'm just wondering if you ever felt like there should have been more attention paid to the Dictators rather than all on the Ramones, or all on the Heartbreakers, or whoever it may have been.
I have no complaints. I had a great career. I've worked constantly. I have over 200 credits as a producer, writer, player, songwriter. I can't complain. What we did, we put out a record in 1975, which was just really kind of wild, not really well produced, not really well played by us, but it had an attitude that people really were not familiar with at the time. We got our second deal, got dropped very quickly. We got our second deal, and we decided, let's make a commercial record. Let's make a record that radio could play. Let's not be so weird. Let's try to be successful. And basically, we made the wrong record at the right time, because 1977 was the time to make the wacky record.
Right.
Because all of a sudden there was an audience, and we made sort of a straightforward pop record that really didn't represent the band. As much as I love pop music, we don't have We didn't have the singer to do that, even though our drummer was a good singer and he sang a lot of the more melodic songs. I don't listen to that record. It's a little self-indulgent. And what happened is we went to England at the end of 77, and we were there when the Sex Pistols record came out. We're touring with the Stranglers, we met the Clash, and all the bands. So what was happening there. And I saw rock and roll Nirvana, where the rock and roll that I loved, which is short 3-minute songs, attitude. It was a total revolution. It was so exciting. The audience was huge. It was affecting fashion, politics, culture. And we came back and I wrote Blood Brothers really, really quickly. If we had put out that Blood Brothers record in 77 instead of 78, I think our future might have been different. But of course, hindsight is 2020.
You mentioned that Epic had dropped you after the first record, Go Girl Crazy, and then you
very quickly. There was
there-
no chance of that record being a success.
right.
We gave them a record that was as uncommercial for that time as any record ever made in 1975.
Well, I mean, they had to look at that record kind of cockeyed, being you got an album that's got California Sun, I Got You, Babe, Handsome Dick's Pro
Back to
Wrestling
Africa.
thing, Back to Africa, perfect, and the album cover, which is the goofiest thing that maybe has ever been put out. I mean, when you presented this record to them, did they have any clue what to do with it, or they just not do it?
I have no idea.
Really?
I was completely removed from any kind of aspect of the business. Sandy and Murray worked at Columbia. These were our managers and producers. Sandy Perlman, Murray Krugman. I owe my career to them. I don't know if my life was changed inexorably positively by my meeting them. I owe these guys a lot. They put me on the path into music. I didn't know what was happening, but look, we made the record we made, and nothing can go back and change it. It's the most uncommercial record ever. And in 1975, not only was it uncommercial, it was like thrown in the trash heap, Now it has been re-released a dozen times around the world since then. Even in America, it's been re-released and remixed, and people like it.
You say it's uncommercial, and that may have been the result of it. But when I hear the songs that you have written over the years, not just in the first album, but certainly on Blood Brothers, you are ripping out some great songs. Your talent as a songwriter, I don't think can be questioned. I mean, those songs are fantastic. But by the time 78, 77 rolls around, the second album briefly showed up on a chart at like 189. The third one didn't chart. After those 3 records had been released, did the wind just kind of come out of your sails, or because you took a little bit of a break after that?
Well, yeah, 78. Well, the singer was on drugs, and it was not possible. We had been dropped for the second time, so it sort of fell apart. Ross joined this band, Shakin' Street. So it really wasn't, we fell apart for a few years, but we got offers in New York because we still had offers in New York. So people would say, "Hey, you want to play? And we'll give you a whole bunch of money." And we usually said yes. So we did a bunch of shows. We put out a live cassette only. Fuck them if they can't take a joke on a Liverpool Roar. And we would do shows every once in a while, and everybody did their own. Scott had the Del Lords. I was producing bands. I was writing songs. And then things changed in the 90s. In 95, we played a show at CBG. And this is right after Green Day was successful.
Right.
So punk was making some kind of a weird comeback. Please Kill Me was out. And we played at CBGB's, and this Spanish promoter said, "Hey," he was at the show. He says, "Hey, do you want to come and tour Spain?" We go, "Okay, yeah, sure." So we toured Spain. It was very successful. Next year, he says, "Why don't you come? Let's come back to Spain." And a promoter in Sweden heard that we're going to Spain. He says, "Why don't you tour Sweden while you're in Spain?" So we did both. And it sort of jump-started everything. And we started playing more. And I said, "Well, let's make a record." And we made DFFD, which I'm very proud of, because it's a reunion record after 20 years. DFFT came out in 2001. We hadn't made a real record since 1978, but it contains one of our most popular songs. And I think it's very rare for a band to reunite and then have one of the most popular songs, which is Who Will Save Rock and Roll. And then there were problems. We broke up after that. And I did solo stuff. I produced records.
In fact, you produced a good deal of records. You mentioned about the credits you have. I mean, some of them include Guided by Voices, the Smithereens, the Barracudas. I mean, it's a pretty interesting stuff. What got you into producing at that point? Was it something that you always wanted to do, or is it something that just kind of fell on your lap?
I said, wow, the vision, the songs I hear in my head are not coming out on tape. How do you do it? So I went through a process. I worked at 8-Track Studios. I experimented. I got bands to let me work with them. And I eventually developed my skills, and where I think I'm a pretty good producer, engineer. Also, when that time, I was playing with the Ramones. Played on Ramones records. I played on Joe Ramone. Whenever he played solo, I played with him and played on his solo records. I was reasonably busy. Again, I'm not making hits, but I'm like a journeyman.
Yeah, you even said to yourself, any day you're making music is a good day.
That's the essence of that's my mantra, and that's the mantra of the Dictators now, because we're a bunch of old guys, and hey, we're making music. We're pretty fucking happy guys. Let me tell you.
I bet.
And when we make, this is how it goes. This is what Albert. I said this to Albert, and I forgot about it, and Albert remembered it. Every day you make music is a good day. Every day you make music with other musicians is a better day. Every day you make music with other musicians on stage, it doesn't get better. So that's how the Dictators get through life now.
You you mentioned that you had your own fanzine when you were a lot younger, and fanzines were became kind of this important phenomenon throughout, especially those punk years where you had a lot of guys writing about their favorite bands, hoping to get into shows as a result of it. Tell me about your experience with that, having your own fanzine, and what fanzines would mean later on.
Well, at one point, I thought I wanted to be a rock writer, a rock critic. I don't know. In the early 70s, I really admired Richard Meltzer, Nick Toschi, Lester Bangs. These guys all became my friends. They encouraged me, mentored me in many ways. And it was a way to get free records. That's what I was really looking for. How do I get free records? I got a magazine. Get on the list for all the record companies, and they send you free records. And I used to get free records every day. Eventually, I don't know how we formed it. Well, we formed the band. That's a whole another story. I go into that story. But I just thought it was a way to express myself when I was a kid. I was a teenager. And my fanzine was basically fiction. I would make up stories. I'd make up concerts. It wasn't serious. As I said, Dictators followed the Teenage Wasteland Gazette theme. So I thought it was a career path when I started. Of course, you never know where things are going to lead.
Have you ever thought about writing now a book of your own about your career, or is that too much?
I think that'd be a pretty boring book. I don't think anybody would be interested. But I get it. If someone wanted a ghost. Oh, somebody's writing a book about the Dictators actually right now. Yeah, the guy's doing a book about the Dictators. He's interviewing everybody. It might take a while before he is done. But he's a serious guy.
I would actually think that'd be really interesting because you fit into this sweet spot of an important change in the way people were listening to music at that time. 1974 through 78 were really amazing times when you consider what was coming in before that.
Very exciting time in music.
Yeah,
very. Absolutely.
And you think about some of the bands that were around back then, and the quality of the music. Everything from Television to Talking Heads to the Ramones. You just go on and on about who was there. Pretty fertile stuff. I would think that story could be told in a million different ways.
Well, we'll see if this guy could tell it and people care. I wouldn't put the time in if it was a ghostwriter who wanted to write my story. Somebody wanted to publish it. I guess I would consider it, but I'm not all that interested in telling my story. I just don't think it's that interesting. I'll be honest. I think I'm a kind of a boring guy who likes to make music, and that's what I like to do. Thankfully, enough people like my music that I've been able to continue doing what I love to doing. My hobbies are my life. I had another hobby. I was in the wine business for a while. That was another hobby. I got very lucky. I had a great job in the wine business back from 2005 to 2010. This was right when Napster was coming out, and there were changes, and I saw that, wow, I'm not getting these offers to produce records anymore. And I got a great offer to work with a guy who won the James Beard Award, one of the best sommeliers in New York. He opened a store. He asked me to help him. And I worked with him for 5-6 years, and it was a fantastic experience. I owe this guy, and again, another guy. So I owe him so much. Like I said,
Yeah.
You got it. When people come into your life and they change it for the positive, all I could do is go, "Wow, how did this happen? How did I get so lucky?"
Is that the reason why you moved out of the city, or were you already out of the city before the wine?
No. I moved out of the city. Well, I bought this house 10 years ago. But I still had my apartment in New York because I wasn't sure. But I didn't think I wanted to grow old in New York City, and things were changing in New York. I felt, and my wife wanted to be in the country, so I sold my apartment in New York in 2019, in November 2019, right before the pandemic. So I got and I sold for a lot of money because it's one of these New York stories where I bought this apartment in a industrial area. It was, nobody was there. And then 10 years later, it's hotels. It's like Soho. It's a restaurant. So I've had a big apartment with a nice backyard. So it was really worth a lot of money near a great location. So I got a lot of money, which allowed me to, live my retirement lifestyle. And then around that time, actually around that same time is when Dictators formed.
Yeah.
Ross, well, I might as well tell the story. I guess you're interested in
Sure.
that story. Okay, so I had not been in touch with Ross. I've been in touch with Scott, but we had money being held at Sound Exchange for a few years. Manitoba was our old singer, Hampstead, Manitoba, was preventing us from getting the money. He wouldn't agree, sign off on the money. So me, Ross, and Scott developed. We had to communicate. How do we do this? Sound Exchange collects digital royalties for artists and record and rights owners, whoever owns the rights to a song. So we had a lot of money sitting there, and we can't get it, and we want our money. So Sound Exchange said, "We'll offer you a mediator. Let's settle this." Manitoba didn't want to do it. Eventually, he gave up, and we got our money. And Ross goes to me and Scott, "Hey, why don't we reform the band?" So that's the last thing I was thinking. I was a happy camper. I was playing in bands locally,
Right.
in my area. I'm doing solo stuff. I'm doing production things. I'm having a good, life is good. I didn't really want to do it. I thought it was just going backwards. Scott wanted to do it. Scott's one of my best buddies. So I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. If I don't like it, I'll back out.
Right.
There's no thing here. So me, Scott, and Ross decided, okay, we're going to reform the band. And we said, who do you want to play drums? And I said, let's get Albert. I called up Albert. I said, Albert, I'm going to ask you a question, but you have to say yes. I will not accept no as an answer. Do you want to play with the Dictators? He goes, sure. And he's been with them. Albert has a lot of skills, a lot of musical skills. He's a songwriter. He's a producer. He's an engineer. He's really good with vocals, arranging vocals. Drummer. He just contributes so much. So we were going to do it with Albert, but we have the sad part of the story is that Scott Kempner, one of my best friends in the world, developed early stage dementia, which his father had. His father eventually died from, and it's the same thing that Malcolm Young had from AC/DC. So we really never got to use his skills. We were always kind of hopeful that Scott was going to come around and we'd be able to use him in some way, but it's a disease that once you got it, it just goes downhill. There's no cure.
Yeah.
There's no back. Once you get dementia, they don't have a cure. So it took us a while to really realize that. I guess we were hoping something different was going to happen. So eventually, we said, okay, we got to get another member. Albert recommended Keith Roth. We all knew.
Right.
I knew he was a DJ. He's a DJ on Sirius. I had never worked with him musically. Albert had worked with him musically. Ross a little bit had worked with him. And so I checked him out. I just did a search for him on YouTube. And I heard him sing. I said, wow, this guy's a good singer. I didn't necessarily like the song he was singing, but he's a good singer. So we invited him down, and it just clicked right away. I mean, he's 10 years younger than us, but he's from the Bronx. His older brother knew Scott. He claims the first record he ever bought in his life was The Dictators Go Girl Crazy. He has the same sense of humor. The guy is great. He's a great singer, and that's how we got the band. That's how we got the band back together.
Yeah.
Dude.
He did a great job on Crazy Horses. I mean, it just sounds awesome.
I sang the first verse. He sang the second verse. We recorded that before he was in the band, so that was his first. That was his entrance. But he's singing. Our next single, he sings 100%, and all the stuff we're recording there, he'll sing. I'd say most of the stuff. Maybe Albert has a song, he might sing it. There's a song I might sing, we'll see. But he's the lead singer. He is the guy in the front. And the shows we just did a damn tour. He did a great job as front man. He's very comfortable talking to people. He's a DJ, so he's got the gift of gab that I don't have. So we're very happy. We're a bunch of happy campers here.
I know that you probably get asked about Manitoba quite a lot, and I don't want to.
Not that much.
I don't want to really. Well, I don't want to get into too much of the details of it. I know it's a largely unsalvageable situation, but I know what it's like to be in a professional situation where those relationships just tend to run their course. But when they do ask you about it, how do you navigate through that? I mean, obviously there's some anger there, some distrust, and for various reasons. But when you do get asked about it, how do you work your way through that, or do you?
I try to be honest. We're trying to. He's a difficult guy. We're trying to dissolve the corporation, the Dictators Corporation, and he's not a cooperative guy. I don't need to go into. People could go on Google.
That's why I'm not asking you for details on it, because I know it's out there.
I don't even go into details. We acknowledge him.
Yeah,
because big part of the history of the band. We're trying to get him. We're trying to set up these new deals so he can make money on the old records, but he doesn't cooperate. So we're trying to do a legal separation. It'll happen soon.
Yeah,
and we'll go our way. He'll go his way. And I look. You're not going to see me putting him down in print or on podcast. I'm not going to do that.
No, of course not. I wasn't asking you to. I just know that difficult situations sometimes require a little bit of not diplomacy, but a little bit of strategizing and massaging a little bit. But I totally understand where you're coming from on that.
We have a new lawyer who dealt with Cream, who had. And Baker and Jack Bruce hated each other. He also dealt with the Rascals. He knows these dynamics of a band, how some people have issues that prevents them from acting reasonably and acting in their own best interest. So, I don't want, if I talk more, I don't want to say something that's denigrating.
Sure.
We don't want to do that. Nobody in the band wants to do that. We just want to make music. And when we've done the actual legal separation, we're going to be happier guys than we are now.
I bet. Well, I mean, I have to say, you're off to a great start with Crazy Horses, and
we have other songs out before that. Also, you didn't mention Goddamn New York, and
Yep.
Let's Get the Band Back Together, which we're pretty proud of also.
They're all good. They're all awesome, and it makes me want to hear more of what's coming because they're all just so well done, and really, it sounds like the Dictators, which is great.
Thank you so much. The next song, by the way, I think our next song is we think this is it's a hit in Dictator land. It's called "Thank You and Have a Nice Day." We might even call the album that. So we're having it. We're making music we like. You know, we got a bunch of tours coming up. You know, we're busy recording and enjoying ourselves. So all is good.
That's great. Andy, I appreciate the time today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right. Take care. The new single from the Dictators is the Osmond Brothers track Crazy Horses, with more promised on the way. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like it, review it, share it with all your friends. Be sure to get regular updates on social media, and you can also email me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to know what you think. Thanks to Z&M Home Buyers for their support, and thanks to you for listening to Baxi's Musical Podcast.